Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Stuff in Excel. I'm Richard, and what we're going to do today is take a look at a couple of new functions in Excel, text before and text after. Now, these came out last year, and they're pretty good functions. They've been used for a while. What we want to do is take a look at them. They sort of are improvements over the old text-to-columns function and the text split function. So they allow us to do some things that we couldn't previously do. So let's first go look at some data and see how we might split that data up. If you look over here to the left of the screen, what you're going to see is you're going to see some items listed here. You have the item description along with the part number. Now, what we'd like to do is split the part number out into one column and the part description out into another column. So let's see how we might do that. Now, the old way we might have done that is done text split. And when we do that, we click on the item, and I'm going to click on the item in cell A1, and we're going to go up to data and over to text to columns, which is up under the data ribbon, and we click on that, and it's going to split that. Now, it's going to ask us it's going to be delimited, and it's going to ask us what we want to do. We want to use the space as our delimiter. We hit finish, and look, it splits that into 3 columns. But that's really not what we want either, because you notice it's got the part description split into 2 separate columns. We really want that into one. Now, I could, highlight those and put those 2 back together, but that's kind of a lot of trouble to do if we don't need to, and in fact, we don't. So another tool we might have tried is the text split function. Now, text split, we go over to cell B1, we're going to say equals text split. We'll hit Control A, and first we click on what the text is. Next, we're going to indicate our delimiter, which is a space. So we do a quote, space, quote, and we just hit OK. And it's going to split that, but again, we get the same problem as we did with the text to columns, where we get it in the text description is actually in a separate box for each one of the words in the description. And if I went down and copied this down, look at the Great Plain one. A couple of things happen. First of all, Great Big Plain ends up being out there. It's the part numbers aren't even in the same columns. And down here, the last one, since all it has is a part number, it's in the first column. And that's just, we don't want to do that either. That's really not what we want to do. So what we're going to try to do is do the text before function. Now, what it does, you're going to identify your delimiter, and you're going to say, we want to keep all the text before that delimiter. Now, what do you do if you have multiple delimiters? Well, that's okay, because the function allows you to identify which instance of the delimiter you want to identify. So, for instance, we'll go to equals text before. I always like to use Control A because it brings up my dialog box. The text is over here in cell A1. Our delimiter is going to be a space, so quote, space, quote. The instance number, in this case, we want to use the second one. And our match mode, now this is if you're trying to match a delimiter, like if it's a capital letter or something, but we're not going to do that. So we'll just skip that one. And then we're also going, and it wants to know, do you want to match from the end? And we'll come back and look at this one a little while later. Right now, it defaults to we're not matching to the delimiter to the end, but we could. Now, remember, when you're in these boxes, over here to the right, you've always got this bar. You want to make sure there's not any more arguments that you might do. And so if you hit Tab again, you notice it goes down. There's another argument. If it's not found, what do you want it to say? And we could put something in there, and we might later. But right now, we're just going to leave it like this, and we'll hit OK. Now, you'll notice the function up here in the function box, and you can see all those arguments that we've laid out. And a big box. Now, if I copy this down, is it going to work for me? I copy it down, and in fact, it's not going to work. First of all, it doesn't find a second instance of the space because there's not a second instance. There's only one space in in cell A3, and down here in cell A5, there aren't any spaces, so that doesn't find that. And Great Big Plain, it's actually got 3 words in that description, but it only picks up the first 2. So that's not going to be what we want to do either. So let's go back to this function and see what else we can do. Actually, if you look at this, for most of these, what you have is at the end, you've got a part number, which is a letter and 5 numbers. So what we can do is we can actually go backwards. So let's go back into this function and see what this function has us do. So we did text before, Control A. Again, we're going to do our text. We're going to tab down and do our delimiter, space, quote, space, quote. Now for the instance, notice what it says down where it describes the declared occurrence of the delimiter. The default is 1. A negative number secures or searches from the end. So the negative number will count from the end, from the right side, and go to the left instead of starting at the left and going to the right. So if we go and find the first space starting at the end, going back to the left, what we're going to see is we're going to see that we can make that work. So we're going to put in a -1. So now the function will go to the end of the string of text and start going back till it finds the first space. And now, again, for match mode, we're going to skip that. Now, match end, here's where we're going to actually put something in. If we let's put a 1 in here and see what happens. And then for the if not found, we're going to type missing description. And we're going to be able to use this when we do our conditional formatting. So I'll hit OK. Now I'm just going to copy this down. Let's see what happens. So in the second one, picked up small box. The third one in cell A3 picked up lemon. In cell A4, picked up great big plain. And then it didn't pick up anything for the last one that doesn't have a description. But it didn't put in missing description. Well, why not? Well, it's because we did this up here, exact match, or match from end. What if we change that to a 0? Let's see what happens. So I changed that to a 0. Now we're going to copy that down, and let's see what happens then. Oh, so it did say missing description this time. Now, why am I going to use that? I'm going to go up here to home. I'm going to take that range, and I'm going to conditionally format this. So I'm going to say I want it to highlight if the text contains missing description. And I'm going to have that, whoops, I keep spelling that incorrectly. I'm going to have it light red with dark red text, and I'm going to click on that. Now, every time it pops up with missing description, it would have that. So if I had another one that would say A65444, and see, it copies that down. It picks up the, if I had, let's just say kite B33222, it's going to pick up kite. It's not going to pick up the missing description. So that's really a neat tool for me. If that highlights, it says, oh, I need to find a description for that item. Now let's go and figure out, we got to get the part number in a cell by itself. Now, how are we going to do that? Here's where we're going to use the text after function. Now, again, if I used it from the left, if I said text after, Control A, and I went and did this, and then I said my delimiter is the space, which is quote, space, quote, and my instance was 2, and I hit OK, it's going to find it for the first one, and maybe for the second, but look at this. The rest of them it doesn't find, right? And in fact, look at the fourth one. Great big is in, it finds plain. That's not what I want. So that's not. But we can do the same thing we did before. We can count from the end going back to the left instead of starting at the left and going to the right. So now we're going to do equals text after, and we'll do our Control A. I'm going to find the text. My delimiter is my space, quote, space, quote. I'm going to go -1 because every part number is the last item after the final space. So I'm going to go -1, and it'll find anything after the first space that it found is what it's going to give me. Match mode, we're going to skip that again because we really don't need it in this case. Match to the end, let's just say yes again and see what happens. And then we'll say if not found. We're going to say missing number, okay? And we'll say OK. So there it is, and we copy this down, and it finds every single one of them, okay? So that's really, really useful to me. It didn't find any where any were missing, and it gave me every single one of those part numbers in a column all by itself. Now I can use that as a data field in any kind of a tool that I want to use, maybe a pivot table or something. Now, there's one instance where this doesn't work really well, I've discovered, and let's say you've got a part description but no number. Let's watch what happens when I do that. So let's say we've got a go-kart, okay? And we hit that, and now look, it's gonna just separate that. It doesn't find the part that I'm wanting, right? It doesn't tell me there's a missing part number. It doesn't put the part description all in one column. So that's a little problem with this. I'm not sure how to fix it yet. But if you've got a part, in this case, if you had a part description without a number, these two functions are not going to pick it up. But if you've at least got the part number and you've got some kind of descriptions, what we've just shown you would allow you to pick that up when you do your text before and text after. Hopefully this was helpful. See you real soon right here on Stuff in Excel.